Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Dun, 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 dun. That's how you should start the show. You should. Where's your guitar? Get it going.
Man, my students love playing that on their instruments. I got a movie favorites book.
I bet.
They love banging that out.
It's
that and the
awesome.
Jurassic Park theme.
No. See, I'm not nuts. Yeah, that's Jurassic Park. Not my thing. I lived with a girl who played that 24/7. Literally, when the tape ended, the VCR would rewind and play it again, over and over and over. That and Beavis and Butthead.
That's wrong.
She had issues.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Yes, I think I know how it ended.
Do you?
It sank. Yeah.
All right, but before we get into Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, I thought we might talk a little bit about the Indiana Jones films in general.
Yeah, good idea. I've got a lot to say about these films because they're all over the road, and also I've just watched them recently.
Okay, so what's your take on the Indy series?
Well, of course, if you live under a rock, you'll have never heard of these things, but the Indiana Jones series, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then you had Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the Last Crusade, and then you had the Crystal Skull. Right? I saw, and I think I've mentioned this in the show, but I saw Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark in the theater with my folks, and at the exact moment he shot that guy that had the swords, the tape broke, and we had to sit there going like, "What?" And I remember being like at the end of that movie when those guys
their faces melt. Mm-hmm.
The ark is open, you know, and the spirits and stuff fly around. Boy, that was so scary. I about died.
It was a frightening scene.
That was. I mean, you look at it now, you're like, but I mean, that was pretty graphic.
Yeah.
That guy freaking melted, man.
That's right at the edge of what I can take in movies.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what we know where the line is.
Right.
But he deserved it. He was a real scumbag.
He was.
But I remember thinking, holy smokes, what a movie. And I, as we were walking out, my dad was like, that was no good.
Aw.
I was like, what? Are you kidding me, Dad? So I was on my own for the rest of the Indiana Jones series. I don't think I saw any of the other ones in the theater except for Crystal Skull. But I'm guessing, do you remember the first time you saw Raiders?
It wasn't until later in life. It was probably in high school that I started watching all the Indiana Jones movies. I think I saw, I think my family rented The Last Crusade when it first became available on video. And I watched it. And I thought it was cool because I hadn't seen the other ones. And I know that people don't like Last Crusade, but to me it was cool because it was like it was kind of like a Dan Brown novel. If you've ever read any of those,
Who?
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know, all of the like the treasure hunts and going through the library and seeing the big X on the carpet and stuff. When you're 10 or 11 years old, that's really cool.
It's cool now.
Yeah. And so, but I saw Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark probably in high school.
So did you watch them in mass?
No, I probably just saw them on TV when they were on.
So you didn't sit down and watch all of them, but they were all released at that point.
Oh yeah, I mean like
Crystal Skull.
I think TBS used to show them all the time.
Yeah. Having had to wait for the sequels, I remember when Temple of Doom came out, and it looked really scary to me. I was like, "Holy smokes!" And I'm trying to think if I saw that in the theater, and I may have. I mean, because it was a big hit, you know.
Well, I do know some trivia about Temple of Doom. Both Temple of Doom and Gremlins were the two films that were responsible for the creation of the PG-13 rating system.
Really?
In America, yeah.
I wonder why Temple of Doom.
The scene where his heart gets ripped out.
Oh,
they
it
thought
wasn't that graphic.
That's what the people thought. Well, we need a rating above PG but below R for these sort of scenes.
Wasn't there a scene in that where they eat monkey brains? Was that in that?
Yeah,
one?
that was in Temple of Doom too.
See, that was much scarier.
That was
I didn't like that, and a lot of people kind of looked down on Temple of Doom. Not me. I like Temple of Doom.
That's my least favorite, to be honest with you.
It's my second favorite. I liked it. I will admit that his love interest or lady co-star, she's every bit as irritating as she could be.
Yeah, and
she's cute, but I mean, she's not like. I didn't like her. She's sort of a flapper type.
Do you know the history behind that too?
I believe she ended up marrying or was married to the guy that ran the studio.
That's how she got the gig. Yeah.
And so you could tell.
Yeah.
But she didn't do well. But it did have Short Round.
Short Round's a nice guy.
Short Round was cool. No Time for Love, Dr. Jones.
Right.
I like him. He was a butt kicker. He was the last guy to get caught, you know. And the idea there was a kid in it. You know, normally I'm not really keen on the whole kid in the movie thing. But I dug him. So otherwise, cool movie, cool bad guy. You know, it was interesting. It was sort of anomalous from the rest of the series in a way, but I liked it. So then you had Last Crusade. Now, I'm a big James Bond guy. So when I heard Sean Connery was going to be in this thing, I was like, oh boy, now you got something. You know.
Of course, this is old Sean Connery at this point.
No, he's young compared to what he is now.
Well, that's true. So are we.
So when I went, I'm pretty sure I think I saw it in the theater, but I'm not sure. But I remember when I saw it, I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it a bit. I thought it was no good. And the only part I liked was when Indy got Hitler to sign that book. That was the only part I thought was funny, you know. But the rest of it just didn't do it for me. I didn't buy into the religious aspects of it. I didn't like the ending with the find the chalice, and it didn't do it. Didn't do it for me. Now I have recently rewatched it, and I watched it with my kid, and I warmed up to it a little bit. It was a little bit better. And there are some pretty funny parts, you know.
When they're tied up, you know, Sean Connery, and they're tied up, and the guy says, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And he says, "I certainly hope you'll die soon." And
I do like that. There's a bit when they're on this Zeppelin, and Indy is dressed as a ticket taker, and there's a Nazi on there, and he takes a Nazi and boots him out of the Zeppelin, and then he goes, he didn't have his ticket. Everyone on the whole Zeppelin holds their ticket up and starts shaking it. Here, I got mine. I thought that was pretty funny, but it's got its moments. You know, again, I'm still not too keen on the ending. He chose poorly. I like that, but it is okay. Then we'll get to I'm guessing you love that one then.
I mean, that one, I like probably 1 and 3 the best, tied. I think they're both good films.
Really? Tied with 1?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I thought 1 was head and shoulders above the other ones. I really did. Of course, it was the first one. Then you got Crystal Skull. Now, this one I absolutely saw in a theater. It was just out of
I saw it in the theater also.
3 or 4 years ago when it came out. And I didn't know anything about it. I knew it was Indiana Jones. I knew Harrison Ford was old at this point. But I thought, well, heck, Indiana Jones, right? And then I went and saw it. Now, have you seen the Crystal Skull?
Yes, I saw it in the theater.
Okay, you didn't come with me, did you?
I might have.
Because I went with a big group of people.
Yeah, I might have come with you.
So what did you think of Crystal Skull? Bill?
I did not hate it nearly as much. It did not deserve nearly the vitriol that it... These movies are not Citizen Kane, you know? Indiana Jones. It's Indy freaking Anna Jones. They're dumb. And this was a dumb movie. Now, this one was probably dumber than the other movies, but it's still a dumb action movie. The whole thing in the refrigerator when he hides from the nuclear bomb, of course he's going to do that. It's Indiana Jones, you know? I thought that the CGI and stuff, it relied too heavily on that stuff. But I don't know. It was fine. You can tell me how much you hate it. Go ahead.
I hated it. Here's how much. A lot. Let me begin. So, for starters, this was the movie where they were going to pass the torch to a new, younger man to pick up the mantle of Indiana Jones.
The young Indiana Jones, I think he was called.
No, he was called that idiot goof from Transformers. What's that goof's name, Boat? Do you remember his name? He's always in trouble.
Alexi Lawless.
No, it's not. So, anyway, the movie is an endless series of events where Indiana Jones gets captured and escapes or is freed over and over and over. Indy looks old and tired.
He looks beat down.
It was cool to see the chick from the first movie come back. I always liked her, you know, but it wasn't that cool. And the
Shia LaBeouf. Thank you, Duncan.
Shia LaBeouf. This guy, I know it's popular. It's stylish even to hate on this guy. So for once, I will be stylish. I don't like this guy.
It's also stylish to hate on this movie. You're being stylish all over the place.
Shia LaBeouf, whatever you call him, he's a goof. The LaBeouf's a goof. It was horrible in this movie. He played this 50s style greasy biker or something.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? This guy's no fighter. Did you look at this guy?
Well, neither is an archaeology professor.
No. I mean, he looked like a goof. It's like if we put biker attire on you and put you on a hog and sent you down to the biker bar. They'd eat you up and spit you out.
They would.
Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe you're a tough guy. If you had your sword, then you got problems. That sounds like a movie. The Adventures of Boat, and you drive around the nation with your
samurai biker.
Samurai get up.
That would be pretty cool, actually.
Man, I'd pay to see that. Yeah. But yeah, LaBeouf was horrible. The whole nuke thing, horrible. The plot for this was god awful. God, bad. It was so bad. The whole Crystal Skull phenomenon.
I thought it was going to be a product tie-in because, Dan Aykroyd has the Crystal Skull vodka that he makes. And I thought that was going to be...
I had no idea. Really?
Yeah.
How are you going to tie that in? What?
Dan Aykroyd's going to show up. Hey, guys, here's some Crystal Skull vodka.
I'm an alien. If you're, I don't know how this flies overseas, but in America, the Crystal Skulls mystery has been very...
Is it actually a real mystery?
Absolutely. If you watched way back when I was a young lad, there was a show called In Search Of.
Leonard Nimoy.
Hosted by Leonard Nimoy. And that was one of the episodes they did was the Crystal Skulls. And if you're into that sort of stuff, which I am, you've heard of these stories and all the people that own these Crystal Skulls. Where did they come from? What do they do?
Right.
And so... leave it to, I believe did Lucas write this? I think Lucas was the guy that wrote the screenplay for this Indiana Jones movie.
I don't know.
Whoever wrote it should stop. But the whole alien tie-in was a disaster. I just hated it. I hated it. Enough said. It was no good. It was a dud. So with those movies out of the way, let's talk about some of the games that we played that were based on the movies. So I think the first Raiders type game I played would probably be the Temple of Doom game that Atari put out. That we actually did we look at that on the show? I believe a while back. The the one where he goes to the mines with his whip and he rescues the kids out of the cages. There's also a mine car section. Surely you've played this. It was on the same hardware that Atari made.
Well, I know that the first game was Raiders of the Lost Ark. On the 2600.
I forgot about that. Yeah. You're right.
That's the one where that's one where Harrison Ford saw it and he's like, that's just like the real movie. In all seriousness, he was all in when he saw that game.
Did Howard Scott Warshaw make that game?
I believe he did in like 4 weeks.
Now, I'd forgotten about that game, and I will have to say that we did play that on Twitch, and it was an advanced game it was an adventure game that you put on the Atari. And that was a very impressive game. I have to say I totally had forgotten about that. So yeah, you're right. It had the iconic tune in it. I know Howard Scott Warshaw made it because I've seen him walking around in that hat. Indy's iconic hat. So I'm sure he made it. So,
well, he's also the ill-fated programmer that was assigned E.T.
Yeah, he got paid though. So you're right, and that was a pretty good game. And then the next game I would have played would have been the Temple of Doom game that we talked about. Now that game has some people like it, some people don't, but I kind of dug it. I think it was on the same chipset in the arcade as Jedi was.
That makes sense because the sprite style is similar.
Right. It's pretty fun, including it's even got a part where the guy's doing the ritual in front of the flaming mouth and the statue. I thought it was a pretty good game. You get your mine cart, pretty good, pretty fun game. Now, can you think of any other of the Indiana Jones games you played up past that point?
I played the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles on the Super Nintendo.
Now, before you get into that, I was a big fan of that show. I think I've mentioned it once or twice just in passing. That was a show that ran on ABC, and I remember it was the lead into Monday Night Football. I don't know why. And there were 3 young Indiana Joneses. There was a little kid, kind of a slightly older kid, and then there was a teenage version. They would go over different aspects of Indy's life depending on what week it was. So but they would be in line with each other. And so it was and I didn't like the little kid, but the oldest kid, he actually had they did stories where he fought in World War I, and it was real intense show. And I don't think it ran more than a couple seasons because it was one of the most expensive TV shows of the time
Really?
ever made. It was real expensive.
I remember liking it, and I remember renting the Super Nintendo game because of it.
How was that?
I can't remember. I wish I could. I should have revisited it
Who
to
knew?
check it out. Yeah.
I remember seeing it out there. I was like, I'm sure this is crap. You know, I know you recall the bit, and I think it was the third Indiana Jones where River Phoenix played Indy. At the very beginning, they had like a flashback where he's on a train. You know, so I think that was sort of the kickoff for the young Indiana
Makes
Jones,
sense.
and that was a good part of the movie. Actually, I did like that part. And River Phoenix was very convincing. Young Indiana Jones.
That's where he gets his hat, right?
He had the
and all that
look.
stuff,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah. So that was cool. And then when you got into your PC, now this was not the first Indiana Jones graphic adventure. Did you play the first one?
No, I didn't play Last Crusade. This is my first graphical adventure in the Indiana Jones universe.
Now the Last Crusade was obviously was older. If you look at it now, it's one of those games that spans the gap. When you're on the PC anyway, when you're moving from sort of your EGA level graphics up to your more VGA level graphics. And it's a little dated. The music's a little dated as well. I was not really a big graphics adventure guy, but my buddies used to play the crap out of it, and I had a copy of it somewhere. But it looked okay. You know, it's the same kind of fare you would expect. Now, before we get into this game, we should mention that there was two Indiana Jones games that were released on multiple platforms that coincided together. There was this game, the Fate of Atlantis. Then there was an Indiana Jones action game. Now, I've not played the action game, but I remember when these two games were released, the action game was, as I recall, was pretty much panned. And that this game was the one that people were really into. Do you have any recollection of the action game?
I was not cognizant of the scene at the time this came out.
It's sad. I'm that old. This game was sort of when it came out was very well regarded. Tell me when to get it kicked.
Now,
Okay. So, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. This came out in 1993. So your boy here was 4 years on the other side of high school at that point. What a bummer. It's very depressing.
your boy here was in the perfect age to enjoy this adventure at 12 years old.
Oh, you're right, man. Developed, of course, by LucasArts. LucasArts had a couple games on the Amigas that they developed. Monkey Island 2 and the action version of Indiana Jones was also a LucasArts joint. You want to take a guess how many discs this came out on?
I know this because I looked it up. It's the same as Monkey Island 2, right? 11 discs.
11 big discs.
Never more did Amiga owners wish for a CD-ROM unit for their computer.
Yeah, and of course this never got a release on CD, so
No.
you're boned.
Not for the Amiga.
One thing I like on this is the languages. You've got your French, German, Italian, and Spanish and English. So they covered I like that, and that seems to be something that comes up again and again on these Scum Engine games. They have no problem.
Well, it's an
apparently.
instant translate. You can sell it all over the world.
I'm not going to go into the people that made this because there's like 1,000. This is your classic. This is when development of games really, these games were done by a large group of people. And from what I read, this game, due to the turnaround time on it, was sort of an all hands on deck affair. So when people got finished doing one thing, they were coming over and working on this.
Well, I've got a little bit of background on one of the designers on this game.
All right, what do you got?
So, whenever we do a game, I usually go over to Lemon Amiga and click on all the names just to see if there's anything
Sure.
interesting. And this guy, Hal Barwood, both of the two lead designers, I think, only worked on this game or this game in Monkey Island. And I was like, Hal Barwood, he didn't do anything else except for this on the Amiga. So what's the deal with this guy? So I Googled him, and this guy worked as an animator for George Lucas on his film THX 1138.
Really? Is that the student film he did?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Isn't it?
And so that's how he broke into the industry. And then in 1981, he decided that he wanted to make video games. And so he created 2 video games for the Apple II, which he wrote and designed, entitled Binary Gauge and Space Snatchers. He gained slightly more fame when he was the screenwriter for Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Wow.
So this guy,
Good, eh?
if you think the writing is good in this game, there's a reason why.
Yeah, and by the way, it is.
Before we go on,
Yeah.
I also want to thank Brutal Barracuda, Amigos Game Selection Committee member, for recommending this game.
Yeah, this was a soft touch for us because I had way back in the day. I had actually had a cup of coffee with this game. Again, as you know, these games aren't necessarily my bag, but Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Enough said. This game has one of the wackiest openings of all time.
I wouldn't call it wacky. I would call it freaking awesome.
It's awesome. It's awesomely wacky. I mean, it sort of makes Indiana Jones look more like Inspector Clouseau because the beginning of this game where it starts out with Indy looking for an idol, a statue, and so you have as the credits are rolling, it's like dun 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 dun. They come up and you see Indy. He kind of takes his whip and he swings into this room. There's books everywhere. He's like, "No, where did I put that statue?" And you sort of kind of help him, but your choices are incredibly limited. And when you click on something, he'll go over and check it out. Like he falls through a hole, then he slips to another hole that a bookcase falls on,
And then he falls through the floor again.
And then after he does that, he slips through a coal chute.
But think about how many games from this era have an interactive opening credit sequence.
None.
This game is awesome.
Yeah. So that was fun. And, of course, it gives you a feel for what you're about to do. Now, of course, at this point, the full Scum Engine isn't, the full interface isn't up, but still, it's cute.
Yeah.
They do a good job. And plus, there's not as much humor in this as there is in, say, Monkey Island, but there's still plenty of humor. This game was released, again, this is no AGA, and the graphics are beautiful. As you would imagine, they were meticulously done on deluxe paint, the old standard, and it looks great. As we mentioned, last time we talked about one of these games, that deluxe paint should automatically get an award for it. At the many times it was used. Amazon Queen is the last example we had of this, and it looked great there too. Now this game, and me and Bo were talking about this off air. This game only appeared on a couple platforms until recently. It had a DOS port, and then the year after it released, it had a CD version, and the DOS version has audio. They actually have audio for all the dialogue, and I actually I played the DOS version this back in the day, and I remembered it, and I went back and listened to it, and the audio is really good. And the guy that got doing Indiana Jones is not Harrison Ford, but the guy is unbelievably similar.
He's not bad. He's not bad.
I mean, if you didn't know any better, if someone said, "Yeah, that's Harrison Ford," I'd have bought it.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot like him. And I think in this case, the dialogue is good. Because this is unlike, say, Flight of the Amazon Queen, where these characters are people you've never seen before or since. You know what Indiana Jones sounds like, so it's okay to hear what he sounds like. And then the rest of the characters, you can get past it because you've got that anchor.
Yeah, I thought that the Amiga version definitely lost out on all the audio fronts. If you listen to the PC, graphically, you look at the PC version, the Amiga version, they look almost the same. There's a little bit more detail in the PC version because of the higher resolution, but it's pretty much similar. The audio is really, really poor when you compare it with the PC version. It's not like the PC version has this lush orchestration, but whatever conversion they did when they were making the Amiga version, it was like they didn't go back and check what the instruments actually sounded like, and some of the stuff just really falls flat compared to the PC version.
I've got a comment, but before I say that, I just happened to glance over, and Barracuda, who just wrote that he named his son Harrison Indy Smith. So he is a big fan. I love that. But getting back to the music, I agree with you. This, you know what the sound in this reminded me of was Wing Commander on the Amiga. It had that sort of MIDI, early sound blastery sound to it, which, again, this is the Amiga, dude. Crank that up.
You can do more. You can do more.
This version of the Scum Engine had what was called the iMuse engine, which was at the time, I remember hearing about this when no one heard about anything. And the gimmick behind it is it's sort of automatic sound that's dynamic and changes depending on what you're doing. Even if you do something, maybe it'll kick in maybe the third or fourth time you attempt something, it'll kick in this different type of music. It's mood. It sets the mood.
Right.
And so I will give the music that. Is the music up to the snuff of the graphics? No, it's not. And this game, and of course,
especially when you compare it to Flight of the Amazon Queen, which is, I think the music in that was just so well done.
Well, the music in this, it was very MIDI sounding music. You're right. I noticed when I listened to it, I was like, man, this is not that appealing. I know we're gonna get murdered because I'm sure people love it.
It's not the Amiga's fault. I mean, the Amiga was capable of producing tons of awesome audio. Whatever the programmers were doing here, I think it was just an example of a lazy port where they took the tracks from the PC version and dumped them without checking on them.
And they did improve the CD. Now the other place this was released, which I was getting to, was the FM. My personal favorite is the FM Towns Marty, which Boat is now required to buy me one of these. But I'm assuming since that was a CD-based engine, it was also just a CD-only release, and I don't know what that would sound like. I'm sure CD helped, and maybe they used this music because they had to fit it on the discs.
Maybe so.
So that's and MIDI is real. I mean, clearly it's very simple to put it together. So I'm guessing that's probably what it was. But this game could have benefited from a more orchestra-like, musical anthem. But it does. The dynamic music is okay. I mean, I do like that. Now, at the time, it was very revolutionary. It's not so much now. You hear it a lot more, but it's pretty cool. And as you play this game, the music will come on. Sometimes there'll be no music. Sometimes they'll start back up depending on what you do.
The thing, it's very jarring. There are long stretches in this game where there is no music or sound at all.
It's funny. You're right. And I was sitting when I was playing this the other day. I was sitting there and the music had went off and I thought I had it muted. And I was like, what's going on? And then I did something. I was like, whoa, it's back.
To me, that is not a good example of sound design. Like, you need to have something, either background noise, like if you're out in the street, like when you're outside the theater at the beginning of the game, you need to have, the sound of cars going by or crickets or something, because it's jarring in a very unpleasant way when it does crank back up again.
I agree with that. So the Scum Engine, we should probably briefly talk about it, was developed by the Lucas guys as an adventure engine. I don't remember what even Scum stands for.
Script creation utility for Maniac Mansion.
And of course, Maniac Mansion was was the premier, I believe, use of it, obviously. And they used it they've used it many times. I know on the Amiga several times. But this was sort of a more doctored up version. They had a little more leeway in it when they put this one together. This engine's, I mean, if you've played any of these games, it's pretty much standard fare. Did you see anything that was any really different?
No, this is.
I think talk to. That was the thing.
I think this was the last game where it sort of resembled, because I think the games that were after this, like Grim Fandango and stuff like that, I think they altered the Scum engine to give you more of the screen. I think they might have changed the command system a little bit, if I remember correctly. But this one was still your classic, commands on the bottom left, inventory on the right.
Yeah, and so I mean, the one thing about this, if you're used to using the system, you can just float between the games without any problem. Now, again, me personally, I like the system in Flight of the Amazon Queen better, but that's just me. And so, I mean, your mileage, it's a pretty personal taste. So we should probably talk about what's going on in this game. The plot in this is bizarre, to say the least. One thing I wanted to mention, there's a way to play this on the Wii. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's in another Indiana Jones game. It's an unlockable or something in there, and you can play it. And apparently, the version that they include was quite nice.
Yeah, I read that too.
I've not seen that, and so I maybe have to try that out. They say it's one of the better versions. So, what is the plot of this game? Well, you're Indiana Jones, and you are basically pursuing. At the beginning of it, you effectively are pursuing a guy who stole something from you, to try to figure out what he's doing. The bad guy, of course, is a Nazi. Those Nazis, they're
always up to no good.
And so Indy hooks up with an old archaeologist buddy named Sophia Hapgood. They had worked together in, I believe it was Iceland, and when they were doing archaeology, but she quit the archaeological game to get into the psychic game, which I thought was a
It's a normal career path.
Sure. So why don't you go into depth? How this plot goes. I mean, I've got a general idea, but I haven't played all the way through it, so I'm not sure of the entirety of it.
So Indy is, him and his sidekick, they've got these beads, and there's an amulet involved, and somebody has run off with part of the puzzle too. and they're basically trying to track him down. He goes to warn this lady that this guy might be after him. They end up going to a bunch of different locales. There's a map. You see the plane flying in a very Indiana
like
Jones fashion. They end up in Atlantis. I don't want to spoil the ending. There are actually multiple endings in this game, depending on how you play it. But if you watch the playthroughs, they actually go through all the different endings, and there are some. It's really neat. I think that the ending is not your normal fare. He definitely doesn't end up with the girl at the end, but it's along the way. It's your normal routine of solving puzzles, collecting items, combining items together, and using them on other items to open a door, etc.
There's some unusual bits in this that I thought were I liked. For one thing, there's a very robust conversation path in this, and what I mean by that is, you really get, this is sort of what you saw in these, but you really got a lot of options with your conversation, how it goes, and really nothing. There are a few places in this game where you can be killed.
Right, which is unusual for a LucasArts game.
But for the most part, you're free to kind of screw up and try again.
Yeah, in the parts where you can be killed, they give you plenty of warning, like, hey, this is, you need to do something. This is an area where you're going to be killed.
I read somewhere that one of the places you could be killed was punching Hitler. So now I didn't.
Don't punch Hitler.
I didn't get. Well, they said it was worth it. I didn't get that far, but apparently at some point you run into and can punch Hitler, which that amused me. But the dialogue's good, and the fact that it looks like stuff that Indy would say, for example. That's what makes it kind of fun. Especially when, again, if you have the PC version of it, you can actually hear Indy say the dialogue when you pick it. That's kind of neat. The one thing about this game is that you can play it in several different ways. All right, now, any chance I got, I tried to beat up somebody in this very superficial fighting.
Well, it's funny they mentioned that because they actually give you a path that you can follow. You can either do the fists path or the...
There's fists, wits, and team.
Right.
Now, I just thought it was funny to punch guys. Like the first thing I did was beat up the bouncer at that girl's at the psychic club. But you can in this, when you want to fight, it's not. You just basically put the mouse pointer where you want to punch, and you hit the button, and he'll punch. There's a life meter. it's super. It's just exact. It shouldn't be any. You don't want some kind of twitchy stuff in the middle of the game. That would kind of ruin the game. But you can also, a lot of it you can just get through by talking your way in and out of situations. I didn't get to a whole... I got as far as you would imagine I would get in this game. But it gave me enough time, to understand how the game works. It's your sort of classic Monkey Island-like game. Like you said, there are plenty of puzzles. I've got to get this item to get this other item to get this guy. I've got to put this mask here. I've got to put this. There's a bit where you've got to try to trick this guy into thinking you're a ghost, and you've got to have a mask and stuff. And I'm not gonna say I don't think it's that revolutionary. I will say again, the common sense elements that I liked in the Amazon, Flight of the Amazon Queen, I thought were sort of present in here, but for whatever reason, I was picking up on the vibe of that game a little more than this one. This game is beautiful. I will say one thing. These guys, you've got a huge staff of guys. Some of the scenes in this are so detailed. I will say they've got that over almost every other game of this type in terms of the way the scenery is drawn. The artist on this must have been out of his mind. They have, just the scenes in libraries and stuff, and they've drawn all this stuff. The screen is completely full of colorful stuff.
Yeah. That's the great thing about this game, is that in some of these rooms, you're going to be stuck in this room for a long time because there's a puzzle you've got to solve. And they make it worth your while because they do make the scenery so beautiful.
Right. Indy can, there's depth when Indy moves. So, like, for example, early in the game, there's a scene where the camera is looking out of a window, and you see Indy come and cross the street and go in this other building, or you can see a guy get in a car. Sometimes there are little cut scenes early on, there's a scene where you see the bad guy who was hiding, and he walks off. And there's some scenes, where just you see stuff that happens that Indy doesn't see, so you sort of have an idea what's going on, that's pretty cool. I liked the girl. There's not, at least to the parts I got, there's no super duper love interesty type thing. They just mostly trade barbs, and since you're playing Indy, you can be as big a jerk as you want. So if you think like all the crap you do is garbage, your psychic thing is crap, the girl has like this spirit guide that's an Atlantean that she calls upon. Indy thinks all that's crap. You can be a real jerk if you want. I like the idea that you could be a jerk if you want. I think that was fun. One thing I wanted to mention is that the story of this game is pretty interesting. I read over. I had to admit, I read the overarch of the story just so I could get a flavor for the ending of it. And when they went to make this game, they originally looked at discarded screenplays to make the game. Did you read that? And one of the ones they looked at was from the same guy.
Indiana Jones and the Brass Monkey or something like that.
No, it was from
the funky.
That would have been a whole different movie where Indiana Jones enters a dance contest. But one of the ones they looked at was an old movie script that got rejected. It was from the guy that did Home Alone, Chris Columbus, did a bunch of good movies. And so they went ahead and just did their own. So this is an entirely original script.
Right. This was really Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah, it was referred to that many times. And I had even heard a rumor, and this is way before Crystal Skull was released, that they were going to base the fourth movie on this game.
It would have been a lot better if they did.
It would have been a lot better. This game was a lot more whimsical. This game was a lot more interesting. Atlantis is cool. I didn't like the alien tie-in in the movie. I thought that was just, I didn't like it. This is your Indiana Jones 4. Really, it is. It's much more interesting to look at. Did the interface do anything for you? I mean, did you notice anything you didn't notice at Monkey Island?
It's very similar to Monkey Island. I tend to prefer this interface over the Flight of the Amazon Queen interface just because I'm more familiar with it. It seems more like home to me. Although I prefer Flight of the Amazon Queen as a game over this game. Like I said, when we talked about that game, that's probably, it might be my favorite point-and-click adventure game of all time. So
they're both beautiful.
But they're both they're a feast for the eyes, as they say.
Yeah. It was said that when this was converted over to the PC, they had to do the dialogue. There were 8,000 lines of dialogue. That goes to show you how much dialogue is in this game, because you've got to think they've got to do lines for every response. All the bad guys' responses, all the NPCs.
I mean, the conversation trees in this game are deep. It's not quite. I think I've never seen a game with more dialogue options than Cruise for a Corpse, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah. The game was a massive success, as you can imagine. And so pretty much after it was released for a little while, there were talks of a sequel. And there was a sequel planned for this game. But it was, believe it or not, it was killed. The original title of it was going to be Indiana Jones and the Iron Phoenix, right? And it was going to be set after World War II and would feature Nazis seeking refuge in Bolivia, trying to resurrect Adolf Hitler. That was going to be the plan. And from what I read, German people, when they demoed the game, their German people were like, "Listen, this has got to go through extensive rewrites to be released in Germany because they've got
laws that prohibit
about that.
Stuff like that."
And so, and they also, LucasArts looked at the overall market. They knew Germany was going to be a big player in this game.
In fact, when I had my sealed copy of Maniac Mansion that I bought at a thrift store for $5 and sold for like $5.75, it was to a guy in Germany.
Really, $575? Wow, what a deal! Here's something I didn't know. I'd heard some of this stuff, but the plot that they were going to use for that game was actually turned into comic books. The Dark Horse of the series of comics.
Interesting.
And under the same name, and they were published in December '94 to March '95. And there's been several comic book adaptations. Another game that we're looking at doing was called Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny. and that was going to revolve around the Spear of Destiny. That's another game that ended up not happening, and it was also another game that got turned into a comic book series, and from April to July of '95. So this game, as big a seller as it was a million copy plus blockbuster. And now you can you can go to Steam and get it. I think Good Old Games has it. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it that I got on a Humble Bundle. It was all the LucasArts games for like 99 cents.
Of course, the reviews on this game, as you can imagine, were off the freaking charts. If I can turn to my reviews page, there it is. So, Amiga actually gave it 91. Amiga Computing 88. Amiga Computing reviewed it again in 95. I love how they do this, and they revised their review down.
Yeah,
I always love that.
Yeah, somebody write in and tell us why that was.
It's funny. I'm looking at these reviews, and they almost all did the same thing. Like Amiga Format reviewed it in 93 and gave it a 92. Then they looked at it again in 95 and gave it a 90. So they revised it down. So I guess the game got less good as it went on. And for whatever reason, they revived down. Now, that much said, it's looked upon now as an absolute classic. And I can remember when this was released, and it was released alongside Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, the action game that we talked about earlier. And the action game was widely regarded as no good, and it was made by the same outfit. So I don't know what happened there. This game, this sort of plot with Atlantis and Nazis, it lends itself to the Scum Engine, that type of game, like perfectly. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, you couldn't pick a better plot. The fact that someone sat down and wrote something that wasn't just competent but was good and interesting. And if you play through this, the one thing that I was worried about, having not played it for years, was I going to feel like Indiana Jones? And you do. That's the point. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're a kid, you want to be in it. I mean, every kid. I knew it, my buddy Chad, Chad Wilcox, when the Indiana Jones movies came out, he went and got himself a hat and the whip and the leather coat and used to wear it around.
Oh, man. Does he still have those?
I called him Indiana Jones because he was the integrator. And I don't know if he still has it, but he looked like a big tubby geek with a Indiana Jones hat.
Yeah, I love it.
My buddy, I knew another guy who wore the coat and the hat and had the whip. And I remember he used to hit me with that whip. That sucker hurt, dude. He would try the tricks.
I was hanging around the wrong people, mate. I should have been running with you and your crowd.
Well, you got to think. This was at the height of the craze.
Mm-hmm.
You came a little bit later, but I mean, I swear to you, on a stack of Bibles, I knew two different guys that dressed like Indiana Jones, wore the hat, and had the whip.
That's great.
And everyone wanted a whip. And before that, no one gave a crap about a whip, mm-hmm. right? But after Indiana Jones, everybody had to get the whip, and the hat's cool looking, So it was really an American phenomenon for sure, and I'm assuming that most of the world it was just as popular. And the game lives up to the legacy of Indiana Jones quite nicely. Again, I'm not the best at these games, and I struggled through. But again, having played these other ones, it's just a matter of trying to do the right thing and say, okay, what do I need to do here? Where do I need to go to get this? Generally it was okay. It wasn't too difficult to figure it out, early on. I'm sure as you get up there, it gets a lot more difficult. So I looked this up on eBay, and it ain't cheap, brother, if you know what I'm saying. These things weren't, and I was surprised there were so few, to be honest with you. I found one in the U.S. that's going, of course, these are all boxed, going for $70. All right. If you're in Italy, for whatever reason, in Italy there was one going for $106. In the UK, there were more of these. You got $81, $121, and $74. In France, you can get one for $82. So anyway it goes, you're up past $70 picking this up. And if you were looking to get a sealed copy or something, you'd probably be paying Maniac Mansion style
I was going to
money.
say, it doesn't surprise me because this is both a very popular genre for people that collect these games. I'm sure that they came with elaborate packaging and the manual and stuff was cool. And also it's Indiana Jones, so you're going to get that whole segment of the population.
And I have to say, it can't be understated the fact that I really dug the plot. I watched some of the way past where I got it on videos to see what was going on, and it's a pretty interesting plot actually. And the tie-in with Atlantis, and the fact that he's with a psychic, the interaction between the psychic and Indy is cool. I really dug that, and she takes it seriously. That's what makes it fun. But what it does is it sets up a lot of great dialogue.
Well, she takes it seriously because it might actually be real.
Hey, who you telling, buddy? I can read your mind right now. Blank slate.
Hey, you don't have to tell me.
It's like looking into the void. And some of the NPCs that are just lumbering around are amusing. Like I said, there's doormen and guards and just goofs, and there's other archaeologists, and they're all, and the Germans. They all have personalities.
I will say that this is it seems like it's a very, very long game.
It must be, because I stink at it, but I still played for hours and hours just to get where I got.
Because if you play it straight through, this long play that we're watching now, it's 3.5 or 4 hours, and that's not taking time to solve the puzzles or anything. So you get your money's worth when you bought it.
Absolutely, but I will say it seems pretty linear. I guess if you pick different ways to play,
I think this is the most non-linear of all point-and-click adventure games.
But still, once you know what you need, I guess they're all sort of like that. But you do have, I like the fact that at one point apparently you could just tell the chick to get lost,
right?
Which is kind of cool, or you can go the fisticuffs way. Again, that's a nice ad. It gives you a little extra value, a little bang for your buck. It is a shame that they never made the sequels for these, because they could have just used this engine, put the new stuff in, and it probably would have been just fine. So, there you go. So, what'd you think overall? You dug it?
Overall, I like it. It's not Flight of the Amazon Queen, but it's just below it.
It's awful pretty.
It is.
It really is gorgeously done.
And it's the closest. It's probably the closest video game I've ever played where it felt like I was playing the movie. I felt like this is encapsulating this character.
Yeah, because he goes a bunch of places and you get your map. And the MIDI music is not great, but it does. It does the job, and it gives you a good feeling. If you can imagine this on, again, the CD version is probably the way to play, in all honesty, because you've got the better music and you've got the dialogue. The dialogue
you don't have to deal with swapping 11 discs in and out.
Oh, man. Like I said, I played the WHD load on this. I didn't even try. Usually I'll load up the GoTech, but I wasn't going, not on 11 discs, brother. I'm not that adventurous.
There were so many reviews I read on this on Lemon where they're like, I played this till I got to disc 10 and it was corrupted, so I never got to finish it. And so
that is the worst thing. That's the worst.
Has that happened to you before?
Honestly, since I didn't play too many games like this, there weren't usually that many discs. Also, on the PC, you were generally unloading to a hard drive.
That's true.
So on the Amiga, so I'm trying to think about what I would play that had that many. Trust me when I say this, I've played games that wouldn't load right, and it was just 2 discs, and it was just so infuriating. It should drive me nuts. I remember playing games where you would sometimes load. Those are the worst. The Coco was notorious for that with the drive. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. And you're like, oh man, it's frustrating. But 11 discs is a lot. Another good reason to get the CD, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right, well, before we close this thing out, just a small plug for Amigathon 2018. If you haven't been yet, check out extralife.org and search for Amigathon. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. And make sure you set aside time on July 7th to watch us play at least 12 hours of Amiga games, if not more. So keep that in mind. I'd also like to mention that we have a Patreon account. If you enjoy our show, you can check us out at patreon.com/Amigos Podcasts. And I'd like to read the list of our Patreon supporters, Aaron. This time I'm going to do it in reverse order, but not just normal reverse order, total reverse order.
I don't know what that means.
That means last name first.
Do you have this memorized?
No.
So you're just going to read off a page?
I'm guaranteed to still mess it up, though.
You could trade Chimp to do that, can't you?
Barman Kilbjorn.
Oh, okay.
Dawn at Pixels. Warren's Jason. Coles Darren. Barracuda Brutal. Bingston Daniel. Humbertstad. Tommy Kim. Nelson Eric. THT. That one works both ways.
Oh, what's that called when you can do that?
It's called a palindrome.
There you go, bam.
Rulo Jonas. Bradley Adam. I messed up. Will Williams makes it difficult. Yeah, Williams Will. Nan Josh. Crypt the From Tapes. Jarvis Anthony. Styles Duncan. Harrington Paul. Jones Brian C. Hucker Gary. Vintage and Retro Brian's O. Battersby Adam. Denson Lane. Dowdy Brent. Vebke W. Graham. Jarud Laurent. Catch a Dream. It's Chris.
Catch a Dream is nice. I like that.
Yeah, that's his alter ego.
Oh.
Abbott Ravi, Hassal Christopher, 75 Blindo, Heland Edvin, Mortensen Slorgard Stefan, Norton Slotha, CTZ Figgy, Boy Dead Creepy, DeRocher Ricky, Perron Matthew, Marshall John, Lord Level, Tyler Donald, Kebab Allen, Keelan Leaf, Ross Dan.
I like Dead Boy Creepy.
Dead Boy Creepy.
Was it was it Creepy Dead? No, it's Boy
Dead Creepy.
Yeah, that's weird.
It is weird. Kind of like Creepy Dead Boy.
They're all
also weird.
Good job, I think.
Thank you. So we are recording this in advance for sometime in the future. The schedule is still messed up in my mind, but the singing will return once we return to our normal schedule.
Oh man!
So
is that a threat or a promise?
It's both all wrapped up into one delicious package.
Oh man!
Aaron, next week we are going to play that crime-stopping classic, Lethal Weapon.
Oh, based on the film.
Based on the film. Yippee-ki-yay, mofo.
No. Oh man!
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Until then, adios.